The Warwick story begins in early 1935, in which during January of that year, the Air Ministry issued specification B135 calling for a twin-engine heavy bomber with a range between 1,500 miles and 2,000 miles, sources differ on this, and carry a bomb load of 2,000 pounds. Some sources also state that the wingspan had to be limited to 100 feet so that it could fit into pre-existing RAF hangars. As discussed in my short Stirling video, it seems to be a myth that the wingspan was limited to 100 feet due to hangar sizes, as RAF hangars were already bigger by this stage. The reason why B135 called for this limitation in wingspan is unclear. In response to this specification, Vickers produced Type 284 with a wingspan of 96 feet 8.5 inches long. Type 284 would be known as the Warwick. Designed alongside the final development version of the Vickers Wellington, the Warwick shared many common features with the Wellington, including using the same geodetic airframe design invented by Barnes-Wallis. It was purposely designed to be similar to the Wellington to enable production to be switched between the two quickly. The engine for the Warwick was chosen as the Bristol Hercules, and in October 1935, Vickers was awarded the contract for a single prototype. This was followed by an order for a second prototype in July 1937. Armament would consist of a nose turret, dorsal turret, and tail turret. The first Warwick prototype flew for the first time on the 13th of August 1939, flying from Brooklands with Joseph Mutt Summers at the controls. The test was short, lasting only a few minutes owing to a defective carburetor linkage. While originally intending to have Bristol Hercules engines, by the time of the first flight, the prototype was powered by the Rolls-Royce Vulture engine. The Rolls-Royce Vulture was suffering from development and reliability issues, and it became clear it would not be suitable. Thus, the Rolls-Royce Vulture-powered Warwicks never entered production. The second prototype was intended to be powered by the Napier Sabre engine. However, delays with its development, plus the fact that it was reserved for the Typhoon program, meant that the second prototype was fitted with the Bristol Centaurus engine. This flew for the first time on the 5th of April 1940. However, the Centaurus was not an overly reliable engine source either, as it was still early in development and there was a shortage of them. This led to an investigation into the possible use of the Pratt & Whitney double wasp radial engine. The second prototype was converted to take the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine and flew in this configuration for the first time in July 1941. Somewhere at the end of 1940, early 1941, Vickers received an order for 250 Warwicks. 150 Mark 1s powered by the Pratt & Whitney double wasp engine and 100 Mark 2s to be powered by the Bristol Centaurus engine. However, the Warwick would never be utilised as a bomber with RAF Bomber Command, as by the time it entered service, the RAF was using 4-engine heavy bombers. Hence, only 16 Mark 1s and 1 Mark 2 were produced. However, the Warwick development continued. During 1942, 14 were ordered as transports for use with the British Overseas Airways Corporation, BOAC, in the Middle East and Africa. Sporting civilian registrations and designated Warwick C1, modifications included the removal of the turrets, increased fuel capacity, and the addition of side windows for the cabin. Powered by Pratt & Whitney double wasp engines, manned by a crew of 4 and able to carry 9,600 pounds, the first flight of a C1 flew in February 1943. 14 were produced, however they would only see limited service with BOAC before returning to the RAF and being used with numbers 167 and 525 Squadron. The Warwick transport would be further developed into the Warwick C3. The main difference with the C1 was the addition of a cargo pannier underneath the fuselage of the plane. Passenger-wise, 26 fully equipped troops could be carried, or 20 paratroopers, and these began entering service in June of 1944. 100 examples of this type were built, but had been retired from service by March 1946. The C Mark IV was very similar to the C Mark III, apart from the power plant being changed to the Centaurus engine. The Warwick's main and most significant application throughout the war was as an air-sea rescue aircraft. These air-sea rescue aircraft were produced in 4 distinct stages. The first 40 examples carried the designation Warwick Bomber/ASR, with some bombers converted to this configuration. These had the ability to carry 2 sets of the Lindholm survival gear. Following this, 10 Warwick ASR Stage A aircraft were built, which would carry either a lifeboat or lid-home survival gear. Next were 20 Warwick ASR Stage B aircraft, which would carry what the Stage A aircraft could, plus the addition of ASV radar. The final version was 204 Warwick ASR Mark 1s, powered by Pratt & Whitney double Wasp engines, and had the ability to carry the Mark II lifeboat. The Warwick started entering the air sea rescue role in 1943, and by 1944 were being used in significant numbers in Britain, Iceland, the Mediterranean, and in the Far East over the Bay of Bengal. The final ASR version was the Warwick ASR Mark 6, with 94 being built, although very few ever made it into service. Another development of the Warwick was as a general reconnaissance aircraft with coastal command. This first appeared as the Warwick GR Mark II, being powered by Bristol Centaurus engines, and having the ability to carry 3 18-inch torpedoes or 2 24-inch torpedoes. It also carried either ASV Mark III or Mark 6B radar underneath the nose. It could carry up to 12,250 pounds of bombs, and some were modified to carry depth charges or rockets. But of the 132 built, none saw combat. Another 14 GR Mark IIs were built as GR2 MET for meteorological duties with armament and bombing gear removed, but none saw service with squadrons. The GR Mark II would evolve into the GR Mark V, the final Warwick variant. The GR Mark V featured a retractable Lee light, 7 machine guns, 6,000 pounds of bombs, mines and depth charges, and replaced a dorsal turret with beam guns. Another important addition was the introduction of a small dorsal fin, which helped fix rudder and directional instability problems which had plagued the Warwick throughout its career. This addition was also fitted retrospectively to earlier models. First flown at Brooklands in April 1944, the type would enter service with No. 179 Squadron at RAF St Evil in November 1944. With 179 Squadron, it was used for patrols over the Bay of Biscay. The Warwick GR Mark V would also serve with numbers 621 and 27 Squadron of the South African Air Force. A total of 210 GR Mark Vs were built. Post-war, the Warwick was quickly retired from service. One C Mark III was utilised by D. Napier and Sons Limited in 1946 as an engine test bed. Around 843 Warwicks were produced. The Warwick wasn't an overly successful aircraft, although its service in the air sea rescue role was important. It was the largest twin-engine aircraft utilised by the RAF during the Second World War.